Today we're talking with David Lee about design thinking in the classroom. That's next on the EdTech vlog. Hi, I'm Dr. Matt Harris, and this is the EdTech vlog. Today we have a special guest, which is a little different. You don't actually have to just listen to me chat on endlessly. We can listen to somebody much smarter than me chat on endlessly. Today I have David Lee, who's going to talk about his book, this wonderful book right here, Design Thinking in the Classroom, which is a concept that we talk about quite a bit here, being a very important pedagogy or very important approach to learning that kind of gets beyond the standard things that we talk about for learning. So, David, thank you so much for joining us. And do you want to give an introduction to yourself from the book?
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name is David Lee. I'm originally from California. My first teaching gig was at Korea International School for 7 years, and I'm currently in Singapore American School, working the elementary, doing some STEM, design, and EdTech.
Excellent. So you're living overseas like I am, similar history, kind of moving around. So yeah. Let's jump right into the book though. So why this particular book? We'll get into the concepts in a minute, but why this book in particular?
Well, about a year ago, I was asked to write the book by a publisher, and my first instinct was to say no, because writing for me is not one of my strong suits, and I've struggled with writing for most of my life. Like, it takes me forever to write an email, but I decided to do it because at the time I was implementing design thinking, and I felt like I was living it, its mindsets and all that. So I really I do feel like I have a growth mindset where I feel like with small manageable steps, with a lot of perseverance and persistence, hard work, I can get to the point where I want to go. And I just felt like this would be like that mountain that I would want to climb. So that's the reason or the decision or the why I made that decision to write it. But also, I read a lot of books on design thinking. I read a lot of books in education, and it just seems like a lot of times the authors make it sound very theoretical and not very practical. And I was lucky enough to be in a makerspace, to be in teaching design thinking, but also not as a solo gig, but I was collaborating with teachers to create these huge project-based learning units. So I had the opportunity to share from ground zero how it would look. And so every project that I talk about in that book I was involved in, and I helped design and implement. So
that's cool.
My goal was not to make it theoretical, and I just felt like there was a need for that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting now. We have so many of these kind of academic tomes that are so theoretical. It's valuable to have something on the ground, but in order to make it valuable, you have to ground it in some people ground in research, some people ground in theory, some around frameworks, and you've chosen design thinking. So I guess my question here is, could you define design thinking for the audience here? And then let's talk about the why. Why is it important?
Okay, design thinking is definitely, it's a combination of both things. So the methodology consists of a set of mindsets that allow creativity, innovation-friendly learning environments to happen. So it's a set of mindsets, and half of it is also the process and also the practices and strategies that are involved in design thinking. If you had to explain it to someone, it's basically a toolkit you use for creative problem solving. And right now, recently, I'm just seeing it more of as a culture as well. It's definitely, I'm leaning towards more that it's a culture, because that's the most important thing. I've tried design thinking without really focusing on the mindsets. That was my first year of design thinking, and it didn't go very well. The students weren't being creative. Just because they're going through the different phases of the method doesn't mean that you're going to be creative. So yeah, and the why for design thinking, like in every mission that you see in school, that schools have, they just talk about future-ready students. You want to prepare them for the unknown, and it's just crazy that we often don't really teach the skills like collaborative skills. Like I remember 5 years ago, 7 years ago, collaboration was on every wall at a school. But every time I went to a conference, there weren't any conferences on how to be collaborative, what type of mindsets you have, what strategies are there. Design thinking provides all that. So the why is basically you're giving these students a toolkit to embrace ambiguity, embrace not knowing, navigating through complex problems that, again, we don't know what they will face. And so I think it's extremely valuable to not only have the content knowledge, but also these skills as well.
So you say you're giving them this toolkit. This
Mm-hmm.
toolkit is around a set of attitudes and cultures and processes, right? But is the
Mm-hmm.
book more designed for teachers that are looking to implement it within their classrooms or for students to read for themselves? Because what I'm finding is that a lot of the books that we have around design thinking are so theoretical that there's really no application to a particular audience.
Yeah.
Whereas yours is very applied towards a specific area. So who is your audience here? Who starts the design thinking process in a school?
I think it's definitely the teachers. The audience would be the teachers and the admin. They are so lucky enough. When I talk about educators, I'm really talking about designers, and that's from day one when I went through the education system in California. Like these teachers sat down all together and designed learning experiences, and a lot of times we don't replicate the real world at all. Like
Mm.
not even close. So starting from with teachers and admin, this book I think helps them to believe that they are designers, and then they can design learning experiences and lessons that don't have to be like very traditional.
Okay.
Um, and also that when the teachers teach this, but also model design thinking, that just helps the students drastically. And I feel like I did that when I was teaching design. Um, I would model it. I would have the language would kind of spread into other classes, and it just created a culture in that way. So I think teachers and
So is that something that you'd recommend? I mean, because we hear about design thinking all over the place, especially kind of with this maker movement and the maker push, this focus on innovation. But as we talk about the process, it's something that's often new or fresh for teachers that haven't gone through like a design technology class or haven't done. Would you suggest for them that maybe part of the professional development of being prepared to do design thinking in the classroom is to experience it themselves, kind of from a learner perspective?
absolutely. And also, I think changing the idea of what design thinking is, it was popularized by IDEO, a design firm, which designed products like tangible, like physical things. But they quickly moved on to realize that it's just basically creative problem solving. And so if you see it that way, then you can apply design thinking to really anything. So you can design a physical object, but also you can design to improve real world experiences.
Okay.
So when you say it like that, I mean, when you think of design thinking in that way, then that opens up, if you have a project that where students are answering a driving question
Hmm.
and they are trying to help a certain group, like design thinking is perfect for that.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Let's actually talk about design thinking from a real process perspective, because you kind of talked about the culture aspects and kind of the attitudes related to it that you need to jump in with both feet. But you have this very nice kind of you have these 5 phases of design thinking. I'm going to get this right here to make sure I have it correct. Um, Empathize, design, ideate, prototype, and test. Can you take us through that? Is that a linear process? Like, where are those? Take us through step by step, just so we have a good idea of the conceptual elements before we kind of dig deep into how do you do it.
When I use design thinking myself, it's not a linear process. I go to a phase based on the need. So when I quickly realize a problem, I can immediately go prototyping because I feel like that helps me to think. And then I could jump back to empathize with the group and see if that worked or not. So it's not linear. I've taught it in a linear fashion because I work with elementary, and so I worked with kindergarten all the way to 5th grade, and they learned it that way. The phases are, I feel like if you go to a school, if they have a design cycle, it's very similar. But what I love about design thinking, one thing is the empathize phase, to really, truly dig deep and try to really understand the people that you are trying to help. So if you're, for example, if students are creating a city plan for the community, go out there, observe, make observations, interview them, learn about their needs, learn about their interests, like really dig deep and find these insights where when you go to the define phase and identify a problem, you're gonna find that all the students have something similar but different as well because they went through that empathy process. And I also love the fact that in a design cycle, well, designers in general are seen as experts. So they come in, and this is kind of what I don't like to like. When I'm asked to consult, I come in and I'm seen as the expert to kind of fix the problem. In design thinking, it's more of a partnership. You're empathizing with these people because they're experts of that context. And so they're absolutely needed. So if I go into a school and help design something for their school, it's more of a partnership. We're collaborating because there's things I don't know and there's things they don't know. And when we come together, it's a powerful thing. So I think empathy there's a lot of other great stuff in like prototyping, testing continuously, rapid prototyping, all of those things. But I think empathize is definitely my favorite phase, the most powerful phase for me.
Can you talk a little bit? You mentioned something really important here that I find oftentimes when I talk to people about design thinking, they conflate it with design cycle, right? Those are two different things. And I just worry that people are going to read your book and go, okay, where is the design cycle here? But can you kind of talk about the difference in how your approach is taking elements of the design cycle rather than replicating the design cycle?
Yeah, I think it's the design cycle, but on steroids. I think one colleague said that, oh, it's kind of like the scientific method, which, if you kind of if you look at it bare bones, it is. It's very similar. You're identifying a problem. You're trying to find this, you're testing, that kind of thing. But what's different is the mindsets and the culture that you create with design thinking. That's absolutely the biggest thing. Because I've met people who are experts with the scientific method. I don't think I can collaborate with them, and I don't think we could be very creative. And science requires that creativity as well, but that's kind of just ripped out from our education. So I think the biggest thing is that's why it's called design thinking. There is constant reflection and thinking of what you are doing. And even as a designer, you're not going there. Understanding that you have your own biases when you're interviewing people. Making sure you don't judge. Those kind of things are not really talked about. And I think that's why design thinking is so special.
So, with anything related to education, it has to come down to learning, right?
Yep.
And you've talked a lot about culture and process and all these great resources that are in the book. And it's just absolutely fascinating to read about it. But I don't think a teacher or a school is going to engage in this unless they really have a good handle on what are those learning outcomes they should aim for or expect. So can you just talk about that a little bit? What's the learning that's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, in my personal experience, it's always been project-based learning. And when we do project-based learning, the driving question that we develop is all based on standards. So when the students are introduced to this question, they're like, we ask them, okay, so what do we need to know to answer this driving question? And surprisingly, they just list our standards because it was developed from there. Um, I find that I find that we give students. I mean, project-based learning is so cool. I love it. Um, we give them that pedagogy, but then we don't give them the tool to actually navigate through that.
Hmm.
And I found it so surprising. Like I hear about STEM, project-based learning, makerspace, and design thinking, but people seem to just separate all these things. I was just curious of why aren't they putting that all together? So if you're doing project-based learning, if you're doing any type of project, I would definitely, and trying to make your learning experiences that you design very real world. It is just basically a tool for the students to use to go through that process. Um, oh, there
That's
was
really
one thing
interesting.
on, yeah,
Let me ask you this one last question before we kind of wrap it up.
yep.
Um, if you're a teacher and you wanted to get started with this, what's the very first step? Like, what is the first nudge that you would give a teacher who perhaps has never really engaged in design thinking or the design cycle or 21st century learning in their classroom? What would be the one piece of advice you'd give them just to kickstart their journey?
For me, I quickly understood, and this is before I learned about design thinking. I think it all started with the beginner's mindset. When I started at KIS in Korea, I was an intern. So I didn't think highly of myself as in like I knew everything. I had a beginner's mindset. And so I was hungry for knowledge. Um, so I didn't have this thing where I had no hesitation to try something because I was new at everything.
Right.
And so I would recommend a teacher to read the book to kind of understand what the book is. I mean, what design thinking is about, and then just immediately try small scale. And that's how I started. I tried it in my classroom. I asked a teacher to try. We integrated it into a science project. We made a video. That video was passed on to parents, and parents were asking, why isn't this happening in my class? And then I got into other classes, and then we started doing PD. So it just grows. But that all started because I tried it in my classroom.
Mm.
I learned so much, like what didn't work and what worked. So it's basically rapid prototyping. Fail fast, do it quick, um, learn a lot, and then the next time is going to be a lot better. And starting another option for starting small is to do a club, to just do a club. And I replicate, let's say I have 8 sessions, I replicate a unit, but I do it I mean, it's more, it's not, as intense, but I structure it in that way, and then I can see what students are capable of doing, what they're not capable of doing, and also how I'm teaching it. I can reflect on that. And so when I actually, bring it into a classroom, it to people think that, oh wow, I mean, this guy's a natural. It's not. It's because I failed a whole bunch of times, and then I tried. I kind of showed people. So just do it, I guess.
So you're a professional failure. Well,
Yeah,
something like that.
absolutely. Yeah,
Well,
professional failure and learner.
excellent. Well, hey, David, tell people how they can get a hold of you. Maybe your Twitter, your YouTube. You're very prolific on social media. How do they get a hold of you, and how do they get a hold of the book?
Yeah, my website is davidleeedtech.org, and you'll find all my social media accounts. It's all David Lee EdTech. I'm really pushing YouTube right now. I'm trying to make more videos. I think that's the next medium. I think that's the next resource for teachers. So I'm just trying to get on that. And then the book, Design Thinking in the Classroom, you can find that on Amazon, Barnes& Noble, Book Depository. And if you're in Singapore, I have a whole bunch, so let me know.
Excellent. Well, hey, thanks everybody for listening. And do me a favor. So down on the bottom here, you're going to see a couple of buttons. One is to subscribe to the channel here, and one is to connect with me on Twitter. My handle is @MattHarrisEdD. Please subscribe to the channel, connect with me. I will share a bunch of resources from David, and hopefully this is the first in a series of multiple conversations that we can have around EdTech. If there's anybody you'd like me to talk to, or topics you'd like me to challenge or push or whatever, or maybe David and I can get together and do an interview with somebody else. We both have a similar mindset around using YouTube to connect with people. Please connect to both of us, share your thoughts and all of that. David, thanks a ton for being here. I really appreciate it. And everybody else, have a great day. Bye.
Bye.